If I could start my investing journey over in 2026 with everything I've learned over the years after investing over $1 million over the past 10 years, this is exactly what I would do. I wish I had a video back then just like this one to help me with my investing because I wasted so much time on emotional decisions, chasing trends and missing out on the power of compounding interest that could have literally added hundreds of thousands of dollars of wealth to my overall wealth at this point in my life. So in this video, I'm going to show you the exact step-by-step investment strategy that I would use if I just started to invest in 2026. This is the same strategy that have helped so many of my clients build six-figure investment portfolios while eliminating debt, while still being able to live their life in the process. So let's get into it. And so I think step one is get your financial house in order first, right? It's really hard to invest, especially invest to the best of your ability in a biblically sound way if your finances are chaos, right? Like I know a lot of people that are investing a little bit probably, but like everything else is just a mess. And I'm sure that they're missing out on opportunities to invest more, to grow their wealth more, spending it in some suboptimal area, and this has definitely been me in the past as well, right? And the money that they are investing, they're feeling apprehensive or resentful about because like, oh man, this is making me tight. Do I need this for that? Do I need it for this bill? What if I overspend here? And it's just like, get your financial house in order, right? The number one way to grow wealth is to establish order and stability with your finances. It's like the soil and water, right? When it comes to growing a plant, the plant is the growth, right? And it's very hard to expect a plant to grow if there's not soil and water, an environment that is conducive to create growth. And so order welcomes wealth, chaos repels it. And so, we want to start with the foundations, right? Before we start investing. And just a little bit of motivation here from scripture. Luke 16:10 says, whoever is faithful in very little is also faithful in much. But whoever is unrighteous in very little is also going to be unrighteous in much. Really what this is saying here is that like before we go and try to earn more, invest more, grow our income levels, right? We must steward what we already have to the best of our ability for so many reasons. One of them being so we can sustain any wealth that we attract, build, instead of having it hurt us more than it's going to help us. This is how you literally lay the foundations. Imagine trying to build a castle without the foundations. Right? Any storm that comes by, all that hard work, all that beauty, all of that worth, all that value, it's not solid, right? It can go away at any time. Same thing with your finances if you don't lay these foundations first. This is the order and the stability I'm trying to encourage here. And so start with the foundational goals. First one, like before you start investing, at least full-blown investing, right? Utilize your extra money to pay off your high interest credit card debt. Like I can't guarantee you anything in the stock market, but I can guarantee you that if you pay your credit card debt off, you'll save 25%, right? The average return on investment in the stock market, I think over the past 30 years has been around 10%, right? Don't get me wrong, some years it's higher, right? Some years it's lower, right? That's the reason why it's an average of 10%, right? Your credit card, I think the average credit card debt in the United States, the interest rates at the time I'm shooting this video is like 29%, which is wild, right? And so it'd be like a very, very good year for you to make 29% in the stock market. And so my point of saying this is like, it's just guaranteed savings of 20, 25, 29, 30% by paying off your credit card debt. I can't guarantee you anything in the stock market, but I can guarantee you that you'll save 25% if you pay off your credit card debt, let alone massively improve your credit and open up more opportunities for you. And most probably importantly for everybody listening to this, yeah, cool 25%, cool money, are practical results, but like the stress and anxiety, man, I'm carrying over this debt is crazy. Great, go take care of it. Start there, right? And then you're gonna have more money to be able to put towards investments that you don't have to put towards the credit cards anymore. And next is build an emergency fund. Right? This is another foundation, right? First foundation, eliminate bad debt. Second foundation, build an emergency fund, right? I can't guarantee you anything in the stock market, but I can guarantee you that something is going to pop up in life, right? It's not if, but when. And this isn't cynical, right? I'm not being scarcity mindset, right? Like, as we all know, life be lifing, right? Something pops up, especially if you got pets, kids, homes. I feel like every time I turn around, something in my family is costing me money. And I'm grateful every time, though, that we have an emergency fund to help us cover that. And so my debt payoff approach for the people listening here, right, will just be attack the one that's costing you the most first, right? And before that, let me back up one step. Go after things in collections. If you have something in collections, pay that off first that's hurting your credit score the most and can hurt you long term, right? The faster we pay it off and get it out of collections, the better. Then from there, go after the debt that's costing you the most. How you can figure that out is not just simply by relying on the interest rate, right? By multiplying the balance times the interest rate. Because though you might have a credit card debt that has 25% interest on it, but the balance is only $2,000. If you got another credit card that's got a 15% interest rate on it, but the balance is $10,000, 15% of $10,000 is a heck of a lot more than 25% of $2,000, right? So multiply the balance times the interest rate and you'll see which one is costing you the most. And don't get me wrong, like I understand the debt snowball, go after the smallest one first to get the quick wins, right? Like, but for a lot of my ideal clients, they're high achievers. They want to do things in the most optimal fashion possible. They don't need like little quick wins and pats on the head, even though there's nothing wrong with that, right? Teach their own, right? Like, but if you want to go about this the optimal way, go after the one that's costing you the most first. And that's usually how I advise people to do that. Then going back to the other foundation, which is building a proper amount of emergency funds, which is 3 to 6 months of expenses set aside in a readily accessible account. Proverbs 21:20 says, the wise store up choice food and olive oil, but fools gulp theirs down. Basically saying that savings is wise. Saving, because like I said before, not if, but when something's going to pop up, right? And I say this in the nicest way possible to my clients and to my viewers. Not having an emergency fund is very selfish, right? It's very selfish because something is going to pop up, right? And not having an emergency fund when something pops up is going to cause you and your family so much unnecessary stress and anxiety and possible trauma, right? If a $2,000 emergency popped up right now and it was a health issue, it was an issue with your pet, right? It was something that you and your significant other start arguing about because of the fear of money and the lack of money comes through in the form of argument and anger, right? That's going to cause you guys some relational issues and it's going to cause your kids some unnecessary trauma. And I'm not judging nobody here, right? I'm definitely not perfect with my money. Me and my wife got an argument last week, but also not using that as a license for you to go out and argue around money, right? That's like, just because I make mistakes, it's because I'm an imperfect human being, even though I do what I do for a living. It's not a license for you guys to continue to not have an emergency fund. And just because, oh, Justin and his wife got an argument. It's not what I'm saying there. I'm just using that example. Like, I'm not judging anybody. I'm not perfect, but whether I was growing up or whether in my own adult life, I realized, financial irresponsibilities, like not having an emergency fund, causes so much unnecessary stress and anxiety and unnecessary trauma, especially for our kids. So a lot of you probably understand that or seen that growing up yourself. Don't repeat unnecessary mistakes to your children, all right? And so it's going to be your monthly expenses, right? That will be the first number in this equation. So you go through your budget and ask yourself, emergency popped up, what would be my monthly expenses, right? And then how much you should have is anywhere from 3 to 6 months. It's just going to depend on your responsibilities and your risk tolerance. So 3 or 4 months would be on the lower end, right? So if you got a good risk tolerance, you got a limited amount of responsibilities, like you don't own a home, your car is paid off, you've got no children, no pets, right? You work from home, you can get a new job if you got fired within the next 90 days. You don't really have too much liabilities or responsibilities. You could probably get away with 3 or 4 months, right? If you're somebody though, like owns a house, has got a couple of kids, especially young children, you drive maybe an expensive car, you travel a decent bit, right? You've got a little bit more responsibilities and liabilities. So you should probably need a little bit more in your emergency funds. So let's just say you're listening to this and you're like, all right, I'm a little conservative. I got a few things I got to take care of. I'd like to have 5 months of emergency funds. And you went through your budget and you said, okay, if an emergency popped up, my expenses each month would be $5,000. 5,000 times 5 months equals $25K, which needs to be your emergency fund number, right? And so what I do is I keep half in my basic checking account to be a buffer in between bills and paychecks, and I keep the other half in a high yield savings account just to make a little bit of money while it's sitting there risk-free. Right now, at the time of me shooting this video, high yield savings accounts are giving you like 3 to 4% return on investment for your money for zero risk. And because it is a savings account, it just gives you a little bit more than your basic savings account. Your basic savings or checking, if you're lucky, is giving you a 0.5%. And so the last thing I'll say is, why don't we have this money invested, right? People are like, whoa, $25K, I should have that invested, right? It's like, we are willing to sacrifice a few bucks on the money that could be made off of this money if it was invested to have it be readily accessible when an emergency pops up, right? Because if an emergency pops up and the stock market's down 10% and your money's down from 25 to, let's just say, $20,000, right? Or whatever 10% of that would be, right? Let's just say it's down $5,000 and you got to pull the money out to cover the emergency. You're going to lock yourself into that loss. The only time you actually lose money in the stock market is when you pull money out, right? Otherwise, it can temporarily drop on paper, but if you just let it sit in there, most times it's going to bounce back. You only lose money when you pull it out, right? And so I don't want you to have your emergency fund in there because it runs a risk of losing money if the emergency pops up when the market is down, right? Also, most times it takes 2 to 3 business days for that money to liquidate and get into your account. I don't know what emergency waits 2 to 3 days. That's technically not an emergency anymore, right? And so, don't get me wrong, there could be some scenarios and nuance there, but just keep it in a basic checking account to be a buffer, or a basic savings account, or if you want to make a little bit of money off of it, keep half of it in your checking account to be a buffer in between bills and paychecks, and keep the other half in a high yield savings account to make make a little bit of money off of it risk-free. Those are the first two foundations. Eliminate your bad debt, right? Build an emergency fund. This is going to make investing a lot more fruitful in many ways. And so number 3 is just easy systems to manage your money, because in a lot of ways, it's like, how do you even know how much money you have to invest if you're not measuring your money in the first place, right? If you're not actually looking for areas of opportunity to cut money out of other places that are just aren't very fruitful or advantageous for you, to reallocate towards investments that have a strong return on investment, that have a strong opportunity to build legacy for you and your family, or to at least show you also, right, where you've got opportunities maybe to make a little bit more money in some things that you have going on or some things that you have on your heart, right? You can't improve what you're not measuring, right? Like if you had a goal of losing weight, you'd probably measure that weight each day to see if you're actually making improvements, to see if what you're actually doing is working, to identify your areas for opportunity. And so when you're on the right budgeting system, which is just simple systems to manage your money, for one, it doesn't decrease your opportunities. It doesn't restrict you. It actually increases your possibilities, increases your opportunities. It shouldn't increase your stress and anxiety. It should decrease your stress and anxiety. If it's not doing that for you, you're probably on the wrong system. And if it doesn't only take 1 to 3 minutes a day to get you best results, you're probably also not on the right system. And so my budgeting philosophy is that it is the main tool for you to accomplish all of your financial goals in the fastest, cheapest, most stress-free and trustworthy way as possible. Right? Imagine this. Imagine you had a goal of digging a 6-foot hole out in your yard, right? And you're competing against somebody who's using a shovel, aka the proper tool. And you're over here using your hands. Who do you think is going to accomplish that goal in the fastest, most stress-free, and most opportunistic way possible? Probably the guy using the shovel, aka the proper tool. You may still be able to get there with your hands, but it's going to take you a heck of a lot longer. And let's just say this is finances. It's going to put you and your family through a whole bunch of unnecessary stress and anxiety and missed opportunities, right? Over what? 2 to 3 minutes a day, right? I love the quote that says, if you're avoiding budgeting, you're already paying the price in stress, let alone all of the money that's leaking because you're not measuring your money, all right? And so the next thing here is, step 2, after you have the foundations, pay off your bad debt, emergency funds, simple systems to measure and manage your money. Step 2 is to start ASAP, right? I know this sounds a little counterintuitive here, right? When it comes to, well, should I be using all of my leftover money to go towards those foundations? Yes. Right? And there's also ways that you can start ASAP. And the faster you get those done, right, those foundational side of things, the faster you can reallocate the money that was going towards the emergency fund, going towards the debt into investments. And so even if it's starting with $5, you can go through your budget while you're paying off debt and while you're building an emergency fund to find $5 somewhere, I bet, right? And the biggest mistake that people make is waiting for the perfect time. There is no such thing as the perfect time. If you wait around for the perfect time, you're going to wait around for forever, right? And as you can imagine, that's not very conducive to your financial goals, especially investing. And so you want to get started ASAP because of compounding interest, right? Compounding interest, I'll explain how it works. So if you got $10,000 invested and you made 10% off of that $10,000, that 10% of $10,000 is $1,000. Now that is added into the original amount that you had invested. So now you have $10,000 plus $1,000, which is $11,000. Now you're making 10% off of $11,000, which is more money than 10% of $10,000, right? And then that money gets added in. And that's how compounding interest starts to work. The interest that you make off the money gets added into the principal amount. And now the 10% or however much you're making is more, right? Even if it stays at 10%, stays at the same percentage, that 10% of a larger dollar amount, right, that's in there in the principal amount is going to be more profits that you make that keep getting added into the account, which allows compounding interest to get started and work, right? And so it's hard to fully wrap your head around compounding interest, probably listening to a podcast episode, right, where I'm not able to write numbers on a paper, pull up an Excel spreadsheet and show you truthfully how it works. But after you hop off of this, right, I said podcast, YouTube episode, you get what I'm saying. Go and Google, right, and put black and white to what compounding interest is. But the faster we get started with it, the better. And so the difference between somebody starting to invest at 30 compared to 40, right, if they're investing $500 a month, right, and they're getting a 10% annual average return on investment on that money. Let's just say someone that starts at 30 compared to 40. The difference when they get to age 65 years old, aka the average retirement age, is almost $1.3 million. $1.3 million by basically simply starting earlier, right? And so the sooner you start investing, the better. And the better being you'll make a whole bunch more money and you'll have multiple 7 figures more, most likely at retirement if you're investing in the right things and staying consistent. All right? I'll give you a very easy way to invest money, even if you don't think that you can. One of my good buddies, Jeremy Newsom, always says, if you can afford to be a consumer, you can afford to be an owner, right? And so stock is just ownership in companies. Buying stock, let's just say in Starbucks, is just you buying ownership in Starbucks. So if you can afford to pay $5 for a Starbucks coffee, guess what you can afford to do? Buy $5 of Starbucks stock, right? So if you can afford to be a consumer, you can afford to be an owner. You can afford to be an investor and start following that mentality, right? A couple of examples that I use is like, if I just went to Starbucks and bought a $5 coffee, I turn around immediately and put $5 in the Starbucks stock. Or I'm a borderline obsessed with Nike, I'm not the company in totality, hear me out on that one, right? But I just have loved the brand since I was little. I've always worn it. We've got a Nike outlet down the street. So every time I go there, I'm like, dude, you just spent $100 on Nike shoes that you probably don't need. They're just gonna sit in your closet and you're gonna wear twice a year. You can afford to invest $100 in Nike stock, right? And so just giving you an example like that, that's a very practical way. Or what I do is I keep a list in my phone of money that I almost spent, right? So I almost spent $20 at Target, but I put it back. If I was ready to spend $20 on something at Target that I didn't need, I can turn around and buy Target stock. And so I keep notes in my phone of money that I spent on things that I could afford to be a consumer, or money that I almost spent, that if I was willing to almost spend that I can turn around and invest it. So pretty awesome, easy, simple little hack, if you will, to start investing and investing ASAP, even if it's $5 a month, all right? And then if you're at an employer where you have a match on your investment account, which just basically is free money. It's 100% guaranteed return on investment, where like they say, basically we'll match up to 6% of your salary, which means, right, that if you make $100,000 a year and it's a 6% match, which means that if you put in $6,000 into your 401k, into your 403, or whatever your investment account is, your retirement account is at your employer, they literally match that at the end of the year. So if you put in, let's just say if you make $100,000 a year and you put in $6,000 into your retirement account, your employer puts $6,000 in at the end of the year. Like, that's incredible. That's 100% return on investment. That's free money. Definitely take advantage of that. So what you can do, as soon as you hop off here, call your employer, either email HR, or if you know that like your 401k retirement accounts with, John Hancock or Transamerica or Vanguard, call them and ask, what is the match, right? And do your best to invest up to that match, right? And so contribute up to that match, but never go above the match though, right? Because usually your employer retirement accounts, like a 403b or a 401k, the only reason why I'm a fan of those is because of the match, because of the free money. If there's not a match on those 401ks or 403bs, I advise you to go to a separate financial advisor and open up either a traditional or a Roth IRA, right? And never go above the match, because if you can invest money above the match, I would rather have you put that in a Roth IRA or traditional IRA. Side note, this is financial education. This isn't financial advisory. Please seek a licensed professional to implement any of this stuff before you do, right? But just from a general standpoint, from an educational standpoint, the fees on your 401ks and your 403bs a lot of times through your employers, they're really high. I'm not a fan of the fee structures. So we take advantage of the free money in the match, but anything above the match, put somewhere else. And if you don't have a match, don't invest in those. Go to a financial advisor and help them find you a more profitable, advantageous investment account. I know this is a lot. So if you want help implementing everything I'm covering, get your foundations in place, choosing the right accounts, and actually starting to build wealth, click the first link in the description to learn more about my program called the Good Steward program, where we help you with all of this and so much more. And so step 4 here, right, is think tax efficiently, right? And so investments that are taxed at 3 stops, right? When they go in, growth, and when they come out. That's usually like a brokerage account, right? Where there's a possibility for investments, let me back up here. There's a possibility for investments to be taxed at 3 different stages: when the money goes in, when it grows, and when you pull it out one day, right? And so there's accounts like brokerage accounts, which are like everyday stocks and bonds, which have their benefits where you can put money in and pull it out at any time. But the issue is it's taxed at all 3 stops, right? You want to find investment accounts that are only taxed at 1 stop, not all 3. Simply put, you're only getting taxed once instead of 3 times is the idea here. And usually Roth IRAs and traditional IRAs are the best vehicles for this because they're only taxed at 1 specific stop. A brokerage account, as I mentioned before, is is taxed at all 3 stops. And so my strategy here is to max out the tax efficient vehicles first. At the time that I'm shooting this, you can only put $7,500 into an IRA, right? Each year. The federal government limits the amount of money that you can put into these accounts because they are so profitable. They're only taxed once, right? And so you can only put $7,500 into an account. If you have a spouse, you both can max them out. So you and your wife or you and your husband can both have your own individual accounts and max them out at $7,500 per year, which is what me and my wife do. After that, we then move on to the next most tax efficient investment. Okay, once we max that out, what's the next most tax efficient investment, right? And so brokerage accounts, I'm not saying are bad. I have money in a brokerage account, but usually it's one of my last resorts. After I've maxed out the tax efficient vehicles, I then go to brokerage accounts. So think tax efficiency. Ask yourself, is this investment that I'm making into the stock market the most tax efficient one possible? Step 5 is like, think about and seek counsel for this, like a licensed professional, but think about investing in index funds, right? Index funds like the S&P 500. Basically, S&P 500 is a collection of the 500 best companies in the United States. And so when you buy shares in the S&P 500, you're buying a little sliver of ownership in the 500 best companies in the United States, which is usually a pretty good winning strategy over the long haul, right? Like Ecclesiastes 11:2 says, invest in 7 ventures, yes, in 8. And so you don't need to be a genius or watch the market daily. You just have to say, okay, I'm invested in the 500 best companies in the United States, and that has been proven to be a good strategy over long periods of time. That is number 5. Look into investing into index funds because it's just automatic built-in quality diversification. You're betting on the best companies in the United States to win over long periods of time, which is usually a good investment strategy. All right. And so automate everything. It's my step 6, right? Take the emotion out of it. Decide on a number that you want to invest, right? Have that money come out on the first of the month or as soon as your paycheck hits. Automate it, let it go in, right? And just learn to live without it. And so a biblical sequence here is tithe first, then invest, then budget and allocate the rest. And so I always use the example with my wife. When we met years ago and I was helping her get her finances in order, I helped her start setting up her investments and setting them up to come out on the first of the month. And when we got married a couple of years later, we combined our investment accounts and I was like, oh my gosh, babe, you have all of that money in there? And she was like, yeah. Just years ago, you helped me set it up on the first, automate it, took the emotions out of it. I learned to live without it and it just added up over the years. And it's just a beautiful example of what can happen when you automate things. It takes the emotions out of things. It makes things just really articulate here, but just automatic, right? And it helps you just get the money out of the account, pay yourself first, learn to live and budget with the rest. And so step 7 here before we wrap up is stay calm when the markets drop. When things start to become expectations, they are no longer problems, right? And so over the past 150 years, right, the market has crashed 19 times. Over the past 150 years of the stock market, the market has crashed 19 times. Every single time it has recovered, right? Over the past 100 years of the stock market, there's data to show every 3 to 5 years, we're going to go into what's called a bear market, which means the market drops by 20% or more. Every single time it has been followed by a bull market, which is a full recovery plus some. It's the idea after every winter comes spring. And so when you understand this data, when you understand expectations, when the market drops, it's no longer a problem, right? Instead, right, it's actually an opportunity for some of the smartest investors. They see it as an opportunity. And I've done this multiple times. When the market drops, you hear it all the time, possibly called buy the dip, right? When the market drops, all that's saying is some of the best companies in the world are on clearance sale. And so when COVID hit years ago and the market dropped, everyone's pulling their money out of fear and locking themselves into those losses. And I understand that's a really drastic drop and a serious reason. Me and my wife, we stayed calm and we actually invested all of our extra money into the stock market because we're like, dude, some of the best companies in the world right now are on clearance. There's nothing wrong with those companies. The world is just panicking because of the pandemic. In a year or two, when things bounce back, the cost and the value of those stocks are going to skyrocket again. And we're going to buy it on clearance sale at $10 a share, and it's going to be worth $200 in a couple of years. And all of that came to fruition. And so when the market drops, stay calm. Don't pull your money out, right? Unless you're advised to do so by a licensed, trustworthy, licensed advisor. I think I said license twice, so that'll help you stop taking advice from people that, aren't credible sources, right? But just stay calm. The only time you lose money in the stock market is when you pull money out. When the market drops, it's only dropping on paper temporarily. It will bounce back based off of the data. And if anything, it's an opportunity to buy more. That's where a lot of wealth is created, is when the market is down. And that's how smart investors think about it. And so the last thing here is kind of the bigger picture, like beyond the stock market. I always talk about the stock market when it comes to the word investing, but it's not the only thing you can invest your money in. You have real estate, business ownership, investing in yourself, right, are some great opportunities here. And so you just got to ask yourself, like, what do you want your life to look like? When do you want to retire by? And then pick your investment strategy based off of which vehicle option will provide that outcome that you want for your life in a desirable time frame. And so with the stock market, right, it's most times guaranteed money over the long periods of time, but you'll be lucky to retire off of money in the stock market when you're 65, best case scenario with some discipline, maybe 56, right? And so I started really looking at my investment journey when I was 26, and my financial advisor said, yeah, man, about 30 years, you'll be able to retire. I was like, what? Like 56 is great. It's like 9 or 10 years sooner than the average retirement age, but like I'm trying to retire when I'm 35. So I gotta figure something else out here. And so that's how I got into business ownership, because the vehicle of businesses, owning that, right, provided me the best chance at producing the outcome that I want for my life in the time frame that I desired. I didn't want to go to a day job until I was 56 or 65, right, to possibly retire. I wanted to be free a lot faster than that, right? And business ownership was my best option. And so you got to ask yourself, right, like, what do you want your life to look like? When do you want to retire by? And then pick your vehicles, right? Whether that be stock market, real estate, or business, right? Based off of the possibility of the opportunity that it'll provide for you to retire in the desirable time frame that you have for your life. And so I often educate people on that. The stock market's great. I'm not saying it's bad. I invest money in the stock market, but I just understand the objective of it. It's money over long periods of time. It's for legacy and generational wealth. It's definitely not for early retirement, though, if you're just investing in it passively, a little bit of money that you have left over each month from your paycheck. And so the biggest key here is steward what is already in your hand now, going back to the beginning of this, right? And so you must steward what's already in your hand well, right? You need to get order in your household. Otherwise, it's going to be almost borderline impossible to invest. And if you are investing, you're definitely not making the best of it. So I encourage you to follow everything in this video, because if I was to start investing again in 2026 from scratch, this would be exactly what I would do. And I'd have millions of dollars more to my name, even only being 33 years old. And so that's exactly how I would start investing in 2026 if I could do it all over again. But look, I couldn't cover everything here, even though I tried my absolute best, and I apologize for talking a little fast. But like the specific foundations that you need before investing in the exact budgeting system, it only takes 1 to 3 minutes a day. I couldn't get to those today. And the complete strategy for managing your money God's way. That's why I made a full course breaking down the complete faith-based money management strategy that has helped nearly 1,000 Christians go from financial chaos to financial confidence. So click the video right now on the screen to watch it. And if you want help and work with me directly to implement all of this, click the first link in the description to apply for the Good Steward program. Thanks for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.